So today, just to back up, I want to talk about superpowers. The reason why I think superpowers are such a fun topic and so important is that they really lead us, or can lead us anyway, to understand the theme in your story, what your story is really about. I mean, really, really about. So we'll talk more about theme on another day. Today, I just want to focus on talents and things that you're good at or that your character may be good at. And it also relates to another question that comes up a lot in classes, and that is, what's the purpose of your life? What's the purpose of my life? Where am I going? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? I often have students that are in transition times. Maybe kids have just left the house and they've been a stay-at-home parent for years, and now things have changed. What do I do now? Maybe they've just entered retirement and there's this new sort of grappling and looking for purpose. So we'll also talk about that a little bit today. So I am going to share screen and we're going to pull up some slides. Here we are. So again, the idea that in writing the hero's journey, we're looking for who is the hero in every story. Remember also that in every great story, all of the heroes, all of the characters, the supporting cast, the sidekicks, they all change and grow from the beginning to the end. The only person that doesn't grow and change in a story is the bad guy. So they never seem to learn anything. So we talk about what are the recurring themes in your story. There are probably more than one, but there may be one big overarching theme. Your superpowers relate to that. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So what are your superpowers? This idea originally occurred to me when I read this wonderful book called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. I heard Liz, she was a keynote speaker at Roots Tech a few years ago. She spoke on on the business day, she talked about rookie smarts and the idea of being off balance and being new in your field can be very powerful. That's a topic for another day, but it led me to read her book, Multipliers. And she said that multipliers are the people who bring out the best in others, not because others give more, but because they become capable of more, because they shine and flourish and they create an environment where other people grow and be their best. She said that one of the things about multipliers is that they're good at spotting people's superpowers. And she kind of defined superpowers as being the things that come easily to you that other people find difficult. So that's when I ask that question, what is your superpower? That's really what I mean. What are things that you're good at that just other people are like, I don't know. So she'd describe it in the workplace as something like multipliers would notice this thing in somebody and say, let me phrase it a different way. Have you ever had someone say to you, how do you do that? And you're like, I don't know, it's easy. Can't you do that? And they're like, no, I cannot do that. It's amazing. And you just sort of shrug it off because you've always been able to do it. It's not a big deal to you. It's not something you necessarily gloat about. You don't think it's a superpower. It's just something that you naturally do well, or maybe that other people find kind of amazing. So I want to get you thinking about that. So a talent that people do not only exceptionally well, but also absolutely naturally. And since this isn't a two-way conversation, since I'm just presenting, I'm going to share with you something I discovered that's one of my superpowers. It's kind of funny, but it is dream analysis. And I don't mean dream analysis like prophetic, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat sort of dream analysis. I just mean like understanding that our dreams are metaphor for life, that when our mind is processing a story, in our sleep, our mind is processing what we're grappling with and tells it in the form of a story. And so I can look at that and go, oh, that's just a metaphor for this. And I put up this sign here about signs because I was having a conversation with my best friend last week, and she was describing a dream that her daughter's boyfriend had, in which her daughter was in trouble and there was all these things happening, but there was this big sign and he was fixated on the sign. What does the sign mean? I'm like, well, he's looking for a sign. He's just joined the military and he's looking for a sign to tell him whether it was the right thing to do or not. He's looking for a sign. So there's a big giant sign in his dream. Anyway, dreams are metaphors. So I only point that out in that it's one of those things I noticed years ago that's sort of obvious to me. People tell me a dream and I'm like, well, it means this. And they're like, how did you know that? I don't know. I just know. And they're like, you're absolutely right. But that's kind of freaky that you figured that out because it was so weird. Well, the reason I bring that up as a superpower is that it actually relates to my line of work. One of the reason I ended up telling people stories for a living is that it's naturally easy for me to see the story, to see what it means when someone's telling me something. I have a just ability to make connections, to understand the deeper meaning, to see their superpowers for one thing. It's one of the things I didn't realize when I started was that when I'm interviewing someone, one of the most fun and rewarding parts of the process is when they start telling me their stories. I see them and then I get to hold up a mirror and say, do you see what I see? There's a theme here. There's this thing that you're really good at. There's this thing that you do that's amazing, that lights up other people. And I get to hold that mirror up and show them what they're good at, maybe in a way that they've never seen before. And in doing so, it reinforces that trait in them and they grow and flourish in a way that they may not have had they not been telling their story. So it's this really wonderful process. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to teach this topic was that you do have superpowers and that I hope that as you tell your story, you'll start to see the themes, you'll start to see some recurring ideas and go, oh my gosh, I'm really good at that. I have a talent here that maybe I didn't realize. And then because you've seen it in terms of your story, you'll start telling that story back to yourself, reinforce it, and grow that talent even more. So that's why I'm passionate about this particular topic. So another book that I've been reading recently that ties in is Atomic Habits. I mentioned it, I think, last week or the week before. Such a good book about finishing, creating habits. As writers, we need habits. This came up in a class I was teaching just last night. How do I find the time to write? We'll talk about that in a second. But in this book, he says, what are the areas in life where you have the ability to endure where others give up? That may be another clue to your superpower. If there's something where areas where you get lost in time, do you start some types of projects and time just gets away from you? It's like you just are in the zone, you're in the flow. But anyway, this idea of when you're in the zone and time just melts away, that may be a clue that that's one of your talents or your superpowers. But also, what are the areas in life where you have the ability to endure where others give up? James Clear, the author, talks about how the greatest impediment to success is not failure, it's boredom. It's not giving up in the hard parts. People will talk about like how you have to really want it or you have to be passionate about it. Part of passion is enduring through boredom, through the lull, through the day after day. So the greatest threat to success is not failure, but boredom. And he says professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way. So those of us who want to finish our book, make a schedule. Make it a habit. Do something every day. Create a showing up routine. Uh, Read the book. I really, really do recommend that you read this, or there's some other good books about habits. But there's this idea of a showing up routine, which is breaking your habit down into the teeniest, tiniest part, like just putting on your workout shoes. If you can just put on your workout shoes, there's a really good chance you will actually go to the gym. The habit isn't going to the gym and working out. It's putting on your dang shoes, or it's getting in the car. It's showing up at the gym. If all you do is 2 minutes, just show up and do it for 2 minutes. So that is what I'm encouraging you to do here with your book. Show up and work on it for 2 minutes. There's this quote. I wish I could remember who I stole this idea from, or this quote, but he said, if I can just make it to the computer and get the file open, then I'll be fine. Just get the file open and then you will be fine. So that might be your showing up routine. Every day at 9 a.m., I sit my behind in this chair and I open the file. I don't have to write one word. I just have to open the file. But guaranteed, if you can open the file, you can work for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 20. Any of you who have ever been in any of my classes know how much you can accomplish in 20 minutes with a good question prompt. So a challenge would be to sit down and write for 20 minutes. But again, we're talking about superpowers today. If there's something that you can do where it's not just a 2-minute routine or a 20-minute routine, but a 4-hour routine, and you're like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? That might just be one of your superpowers. So, oh, here's that quote I was looking for. What causes you to lose track of time? Here's another fun question related to your superpower. What's your nemesis? With every gift, there's a flip side. With every talent, there's usually a flip side of the coin, and they're almost always the same dang thing. It's just one side is the strength, and one side is the strength taken to an extreme, the weakness. Or you might have a weakness where that has become a strength. So I like to encourage people to think about flip sides. So that's why I ask, what is your nemesis? Part of the reason too is it's just fun imagery, because in every superhero story, it's what's the thing that makes the hero the greatest? It's the nemesis. The better the nemesis, the stronger the hero. So this is sort of a writing tip or technique. Give your hero a worthy nemesis. Give your hero a challenge that's worthy of the hero. Oftentimes, as we're writing about our stories, we may be tempted to tone down the hard stuff. Don't. The harder the challenge in the story, the greater will be the triumph at the end. When we talk about character arc, one of the images that I like the best is that of a bow and arrow. And when you draw your arrow back the farthest and release it, it will soar the highest. So that soaring is what we mean by arc, that trajectory. And by drawing the arrow back, I mean draw it back into the hardest possible challenge, or the state of the needing the most growth. You may also be hesitant to write in your biggest flaws, the things that need fixing, to make yourself look bad at the beginning of the story. But if you're willing to draw the bow back to the place of the most growth needed, it'll be the very most satisfying when the arc continues, and then you rest at the end and show you or your character in a place of transformation. So don't be afraid to give your character a difficult challenge, some big flaws in the end, or a really bad nemesis. In Hollywood, they have an adage that says, make the bad guys badder. Now, in life stories, we may not want to write our loved ones as bad guys, so I get that. But challenge, your challenge might not be a bad person. It might be an idea or a physical ailment. It might be cancer. It might be depression or some other demon that you face inside. Also, here's another fun question. Who is your sidekick? Every superhero needs a great sidekick. So give that some thought. If you have never written about your sidekick, maybe that would be a great writing challenge. Uh, Spend 20 minutes just writing about your sidekick. What is that person's strengths? In what ways has your sidekick brought out the best in you, been there for you in your darkest hour, etc. So that can be a fun place to explore, and make sure that you give your sidekick some credit in your story. Here's another question about your superpowers. When do you feel most alive? Whatever you're doing that makes you feel alive and wonderful. I put a picture of a garden here because I do feel alive when I am pulling weeds or planting things in the soil. I feel connected and like I'm a human and not a robot sitting at a piece of technology. So that's one of the reasons I sometimes use gardening analogies, because I love it and feel alive. And also because, well, this isn't about me. I'm going to ask you a question, another question prompt that's not on this list, but a question prompt is, when do you fulfill your purpose? So let me phrase it a different way. You could say, I fulfill my purpose when ... So one of the reasons I brought up that question in terms of garden is, years ago, I attended a class and someone asked that question. They handed out 3x5 cards and Sharpies, and I got to write down, I fulfill my purpose when. And when I wrote on that card more than 10 years ago, probably 20 years ago, was, I fulfill my purpose when I'm helping other people fulfill theirs. And interestingly, I was working at a technical college at the time, and my job was helping students fulfill their purpose. I was in student services. And now I'm in a totally different line of work, but that purpose hasn't changed. When you all are here, I like to think of you as seedlings. You're my little flowers, and I want to help you grow and flourish and create an environment where you can feel safe to share your stories, where you can feel encouraged, where there's light and growing medium and fertilizer and all the good stuff. So garden physically and metaphorically. So here's another thought about purpose, the difference between purpose and vocation. We talked about transition times when people may be no longer working in a job. Maybe they've retired, or maybe we get too caught up in the difference between, or we get too caught up in our work. Guilty. Here's a thought. My work is not my purpose. It's not. I mean, as much as I consider my purpose to help others, I could do that in many different ways. I could do that in different vocations, in different environments. That doesn't change who I am. If my business failed tomorrow, would I be a failure as a human being? No, of course not. And neither would you if you did something that failed. So I posted this picture of a book. I've mentioned Rob many times. He's dear to me. He was a client and is now a great friend. There's a moment in his book that really taught me an important lesson. And it was when he went and had a conversation with one of the physicians who saved his life. He was thanking Dr. Bajwa. Dr. Bajwa is a very spiritual, beautiful man. And Rob said something along the lines of, gosh, it's so wonderful that you're doing this work that's your purpose. And Dr. Bajwa stopped him and said, no, you've got something wrong. Medicine is not my purpose. Medicine is my vocation. My purpose is to know God. And I liked that. I thought that was a much deeper and more whole and beautiful way of thinking about our purpose. So if you're caught up in a job that may feel less than fulfilling, if the daily grind feels mundane, look, we all have to make a living, right? We're here. We have to do our thing day after day, even in the boredom. But that's not our deepest purpose. Maybe what we're just here to help others, to add a little bit more light in the world, to do something to help somebody else shine and grow. So, in short, look for your superpowers and the recurring themes in your story. And yeah, I'm going to go back. Okay, one more question, I guess. What are lessons you've had to learn again and again? That may be another question related to your theme. Like I said, we'll talk more about theme on another day. I want to do a deep dive just on theme, so I'll probably dive into this question then. But those are some thoughts. May you find your own superpowers and feel empowered in knowing that you are unique and wonderful and have things to offer this world that nobody else is, that nobody else does. And the things that come easy to you may be more special than you realize. So give that some thought, and I'll see you next week.